Hello, welcome to BeMORE. I'm Nicolette Wolves, the CEO of BeMORE. BeMORE is a charity that connects, educates, and inspires young people who are passionate to make a difference in this world through living generously. And we hold regular webinars, and tonight it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Cristina Escalante. Welcome to BeMORE, Cristina. Cristina
Thank you, Nicolette.
It's my pleasure. We're going to be talking about Cristina's journey of generosity, and through her personal experience of generosity, draw out her secrets to living a happier lifestyle through generosity. Cristina, you have known BeMORE for over a year now. You started off by joining a Goldman Sachs BeMORE program. And very quickly after that, Cristina actually became a trustee. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome her now as chairwoman of BeMORE, taking over from the brilliant Toby Ali Usman. So we want to thank Toby. Cristina, we're delighted to have you at BeMORE as chairwoman. I think before we start, let me just give a bit of background as to who you are. And then we'll hear a lot more in our discussion together. We're going to be talking for about 20 minutes in conversation with Cristina. I'd love you to think about just posting some questions in the chat. We'll have some time for questions after we've had our initial discussion. So please do post your questions in the chat. Cristina, you are at the moment Executive Director at Goldman Sachs, and I believe that you have been in London for 10 years in this role. But before that, you were born and bred and started your career in San Francisco, in California. And you moved over, and your specialism in your career and your professional life is tax, risk management. You are an accountant, accounts as well, and you're also, on top of all of that, not only are you then investing in BeMORE as a charity, you're also, well, you've just completed your first year of an MBA at Exeter University. But you have a lot on your plate, and generosity must mean a lot to you. And what I'd love to do is just roll back to the beginning of your generous journey and just ask a very simple question, which is, what makes you feel inspired to give and be generous?
Yes, of course. And thanks for that introduction. If we want to take it way back, and why, to your point, it really, generosity in general, and anything to do with it, takes it's a priority in my life. And I can take it back to, at a young age, I was directly impacted by generosity. And those experiences created a passion, which remained throughout adulthood. And my life was touched both as a receiver and a giver of generosity at a very young age. So I was able to experience both facets. And as a receiver, I became aware of the level of need that exists. And so I was able to understand the impacts of generosity in terms of people giving, and what that had, how that changed the path of my life. And so going back to my childhood, I grew up in an environment where, we struggled financially, and that was not because my parents, didn't work hard. It was more on the back of an addiction that my dad struggled with. And so throughout our childhood, his battle became worse. And he, struggled to make ends meet. He would use some of, our financial resources for things that were not, rent and food. And so, we were in an environment where sometimes we didn't know growing up where our next meal would come from. There were times where, we were a couple months behind on rent. And there were distinct situations where it was the generosity of individuals, some that knew us well and some that didn't know us that well, or through programs, that really sustained us, in terms of our next meal and, where we were going to live. And so, I was lucky in a sense that I was directly impacted by the generosity of those individuals that were obedient to, kind of that voice inside that said, bring this family some groceries, or donate to that food bank, or, donate to, directly give, this mother some money, or, donate to that charity that helps, situations such as what my family was going through. And I distinctly remember one particular situation where there was a lady that we knew, a friend of my mom, and I remember hearing the doorbell of her, coming in with groceries, and that in itself, kind of that picture, I vividly remember. And the groceries weren't much; they were, a loaf of bread, some milk, just basic groceries. But that instance, I remember, stuck with me so much that it made me have this passion and advocate, the power of generosity. Had that not been for those individuals, like, we may not have had a meal, that week. And so at a young age as well, I also understood the power of giving. I became our family's sole financial, a breadwinner, essentially, at the age of 17. And so that experience taught me, essentially I was working about 2 to 3 jobs to kind of make ends meet for my family. And so that taught me the power of giving. You would think that as a teenager, I would have kind of been resentful or angry to be in that situation, but actually it had the reverse effect. It gave me a sense of satisfaction and a sense of purpose to know that I was working this hard, not just for myself, but for my mom, for my brother, and my sister. And so those experiences kind of shaped, the power of giving and the power of receiving, and it shaped kind of my passion for advocacy in generosity in general.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And generosity does start when you receive first, and you're so moved by being the recipient of a gift that sometimes you can't help but move it on and pay it forward to someone else. So generosity has obviously changed you, and obviously now you're a bit older. And are you still the breadwinner for your family?
Yeah, definitely. For my family back home, there's still like elements of support for sure, and that comes more from a place of me wanting to do that. I think in general, kind of again being both a giver and a recipient of generosity, you kind of realize that your life would not be what it is today if it wasn't for that generosity that I personally received, and my family can say the same. And again, as a giver, it changes your life because it gives you purpose. I feel fulfilled by being a steward of the blessings that I've been afforded, whether it be time, health, talent, finances. I feel a sense of purpose and being part of something that's even greater than me and my immediate kind of circle of people that I know. It goes beyond that.
So just thinking back, obviously you've got a very successful career. How have you tried to incorporate this core value of generosity moving through as you've matured, as potentially, I guess, you've gone up the salary grade as well? How have you carried it on?
Yeah, there's been a number of elements when you think about giving. I think financial giving is a core of my life. I grew up with the practice of no matter how little we make, we give 10%. So the concept of tithing was instilled at me at a very young age. And then as you kind of, to your point, as you become, you just grow in your ability to give, that took many facets in terms of financial, as well as giving my time, but also not just my time, but also targeting essentially where I wanted the impact to be. And that has changed, throughout the years. Coming out of school, I know that when I navigated, finding a corporate job, I realized that, if you come from a certain background, disadvantage, whatever you want to call it, not connected, there are a number of hurdles and obstacles that you have to go through in order to make the right connections, tap into the right networks, and also just not having the access to capital. All those things combined, I realized that there were, people like myself that, had the ability, had the talent, had the drive, had the passion, but might not have the opportunities. So coming out of school, I spent a number of years kind of looking back and ensuring that, where there were programs that were missing, or job fairs, or just, being able to, pick up the phone and get somebody a job. Like, that was a true passion of mine, because I knew that there were a number of talented young people from certain communities that just weren't having, those right opportunities. And so that, what to me gave me a sense of purpose as to like why I would want to continue to pursue a career in corporate, because, many of times I've kind of soul searched to say like, well, should I really be, it feels like kind of my skill set and what I'm passionate about would be a better fit working for a nonprofit, and kind of the impact that I can make in a nonprofit. But I did realize, throughout my career that that the level of impact that I could make being in the corporate environment as well has been, beyond what I thought I could achieve, in terms of being to create opportunities for people and having that be, a goal or something that I wanted to achieve in terms of impact. And that went alongside, my charitable giving financially, and also kind of, the donation of time and other charitable endeavors.
So talk to me a bit about the time and volunteering that you've done for charity, because I think in California you were involved in charitable work out there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spoke a little bit. So out of university, I joined the board of a nonprofit, again, geared towards education and creating opportunities through networks of young people. And so it was reaching as far, down as local high schools, and, just getting them just familiar with, the types of careers and opportunities, whether it be in finance or accounting, that they may not have even heard of or knew that existed. And so kind of funneling that information was the first kind of component of it, but also the connections and the network. So gathering young professionals, that had that same passion, and just connecting. Mentorship as well was a big one. And then also ultimately creating opportunities through job fairs. So gathering like all the corporate connections that we had, and, convincing them to host career fairs for, for a pool of talent, that they may not have access through kind of the traditional recruiting kind of avenues. And so that was, after university, I spent a bit of time doing that. I was only in the US after school for about 2 years, and then I moved over to London. And so in London, it's been, a wide range of initiatives. I found a true passion, I think kind of along the same theme of, and it's been resonating throughout kind of my life, of creating opportunities for, I don't know, you can call it the underdog, or, you know, people that just wouldn't have access to those opportunities. I realized coming into finance that access to capital is a massive problem for a number of communities. And so microfinance was something that I started to become a lot more involved with through an organization called BeMORE, which is an organization that looks to create opportunities for entrepreneurs in Latin America, specifically Latin American women, and takes them through kind of an education, and then essentially a program where they're able to take these small loans and you know, invest it into their business, and then repay, pay it back, you know, pay it forward, I guess you can call it. And then, you know, kind of using that same bucket of money to be able to create opportunities for other women. So that was, you know, an organization that was very heavily involved with before I became involved with BeMORE.
That's amazing. And then move forward to last spring when you joined a BeMORE program at Goldman Sachs. Tell us why you decided, with all your experience of generosity, to actually come along and join a BeMORE program there.
I was I attended actually your presentation on BeMORE, and the angle of the charity was actually very interesting to me in terms of it was a bit different, where most charities are geared towards a specific, you know, a specific problem in society. And either through, you know, both a combination of volunteer and financial giving, you address kind of that solution. But BeMORE was interesting to me in that it was the approach to giving was something I hadn't come across before, in terms of investing in like a culture of philanthropy, right? Inspiring people and groups of people to come together, and without any real kind of agenda or, you know, trying to skew people one way or another, just have them come together in a true community form, have a blank slate, right? And come together and create a solution. And through that, the kind of the power of that was something that I was very attracted to. Specifically, we had two MDs that gave phenomenal stories of their journey in philanthropy and kind of their ties to BeMORE. So that's what intrigued me, really. Attended some of the sessions, and as we talked through, you know, what the program was about, I definitely just wanted to be a part of it. Didn't think about, you know, any type of you know, leadership capacity. It was more, I just want to be a part of this. I want to experience this. And that's how the journey started.
That's brilliant. And then just briefly for the BeMORE community, what charity do you end up supporting as a group, and what was your experience at the end?
Yeah, my experience was phenomenal. I think I was part, as you mentioned, part of a group within Goldman Sachs. There's two groups of about 10 people each. And so we came together wanting to raise money, not just for essentially just to donate, but more to have something that would be sustainable and that would grow into something bigger. Like, that's just the kind of the initial thought that we had. And so we went through a number of organizations where potentially we could do that, more along the lines of teaching people how to build the skills that they would require, right? So that they could go and, you know, either create their own business or, you know, teach others to do things. So something that would be sustainable in the long term. And we ultimately decided to support a microfinance organization that essentially creates kind of the same concept of BeMORE, but in the continent of Africa. and has an education program, as well as the access to micro loans. I don't know that they focus specifically on women, but a number of the entrepreneurs end up being women. And what was extremely appealing about supporting this organization was that we were able to essentially sponsor full villages and full communities, which was mind-blowing to me, because it was like, it wasn't just, oh, let me donate to an organization. It was, we knew that the money that we were raising was going to take an entire village or an entire community, through this program, and give them the opportunity to be able to not just learn how to create a business, but also have the access to the capital. And once they paid that back, it would go on to the next community, and they'd be able to have that opportunity. And we thought the impact of that could be wider spread than we had ever imagined. And what we were able to achieve in I think it was 2 to 3 months time that we went through the program was just phenomenal. And to me, it really truly, created an impact in my life to see how much you can achieve when you bring a group of like-minded, people, the community, and just how quickly we were able to just, raise the funds that we did, target the organization that we wanted to get involved in. And, we're currently, in communication with the founder of the organization. And, right now with the pandemic and everything, this probably won't happen, within the next year or so, but we had plans to actually, visit the on-site location, where we were actually able to, interact with the participants of the program. So kind of a longer term partnership with the organization. And all those things combined, I think just, gave me this desire to want to continue not just my involvement, but see how I can contribute, whatever I could to this organization.
That's brilliant. Part of the BeMORE program is that we do pre-BeMORE impact surveys, and then we capture people at the end of the program and do a post-impact survey. And people report that going through a BeMORE program, that they're 33%, to be exact, happier and feel a lot more satisfied in their life through going through and discovering generosity. And I know that it's a statistic. They do say typically that you feel 30% more happy being generous. And I think, drawn from your very varied experience of being both a receiver and giver in many, many different ways throughout the years, I'd just love to know what your secrets are in terms of finding, I guess, more happiness through living generously.
Yeah, sure. A Chinese saying comes to mind. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. And so I think it all is, it's very simple in terms of the power of just being able to help someone. And that's the gist of it. But I think in terms of, if we want to kind of unpack, kind of the top things that one can do to really be able to enjoy, a sustainable life of philanthropy, I would say probably the most important thing is to find your passion, find what it is that inside of you, drives you, gets you up, in the morning, doesn't let you sleep at night. Because I think that in itself will create that level of impact, that when you see kind of the magnitude of the impact that you can have individually and collectively, that will continue to fuel your passion to want to, do things that doesn't even feel like work. Sometimes, time is short, sometimes, resources are short, but when you have a passion for it, you prioritize it and you make it happen one way or another. So that to me has been kind of one of the top things that has kept me kind of focused on it for a number of years. I would also say that it's really important, and this I found along the way, to integrate your skills and interests with a particular need. So if you have, experience in finance, there are so many, avenues of need in that area, not just by, opening up your checkbook and, donating. There are a number of ways that you can use your financial savviness, your financial know-how, and fill those gaps, within communities that need it. And that's just one example, but it's more being able to identify, what your skill sets are, what you love to do, and integrate that to see if there's a problem within our society that you can help solve with that, because it makes it individual, right? It makes it feel like what I have as a skill set and what I have as a talent is very unique, and I was created for a specific purpose. And so I have found that being able to combine those two things really kind of helps you to sustain, the hard work that it is, to invest your time and your resources to solve some of the many problems that we have in our world currently. And I would say the third thing is to find a community. And I think that's where BeMORE's overall mandate and structure and just the goal of BeMORE is to create that community, and to be able to find like-minded people, because I think those experiences stick with you, and you're able to create relationships and friendships that will last a lifetime. And so, again, talking about sustainability and how you keep it going, I think finding a community or creating a community that will connect you with people that are like-minded. I mean, what you can achieve is just beyond you can ever imagine. And that has been my experience so far.
That's amazing. So you're saying find something that you're passionate in and support that, because it will continue motivating you through the tough times, but absolutely reward you as well. And then you're saying to use those unique skills and talents that only you have, and in some sense find a bit more meaning and purpose in what you do by giving and volunteering those skill sets into the charitable sector in some way. And thirdly, it is all about community. I've just come off a call with our recent graduating BeMORE online group, and actually they're setting up monthly calls with each other to be accountable and just to hang out, hopefully face to face at some point. I know they're doing a walk together soon for a fundraiser for their charity. But this is all about doing things together, because there's greatness in numbers and diversity as well. And so we really encourage that. So thank you for those brilliant, brilliant tips. And it moves us on to the fact that you're now chairwoman of BeMORE. And have you got any thoughts about that? Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, it's the entire experience has been a bit surreal. It's happened all so quickly, but in all honesty, it means the world to me. I when I decided to participate in the initial kind of pilot program out of Goldman Sachs in partnership with BeMORE, never had I imagined that this would be the results in terms of ultimately being able to not just participate, but eventually lead an organization such as this. And I'm really excited, just for the opportunity. I've been provided a platform, right, to increase my reach and inspiring others to engage, to just engage or just to widen, right, the scope of their own giving. So for me, I'm really excited for, kind of the next year and to continue to have BeMORE extend its reach past, what we've done so far. And there's lots of ideas and opportunities that we've discussed as a leadership group. So I'm really privileged, honored, and humbled to be the new chairwoman.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Well, great. Look, the BeMORE community is listening. And if there was one thing that you've discussed from tonight that could sum up everything you want to say, narrow it down to one thing, what would be the message to the BeMORE community tonight?
I would say it's actually quite simple. Be proactive, because it is better to give than it is to receive. Very, very simple.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Cristina. That's been wonderful. It's just so lovely to hear your journey and just how you're giving back. So wonderful. Well, look, we've got some questions. Okay, so Segal, thank you so much for your question. He sent this while you were talking about the Goldman Sachs BeMORE program, and wanted to know, how did Goldman Sachs themselves corporately get involved with the BeMORE program, if they did at all?
So as a firm, what the firm has done is facilitated our ability as, like, say, a BeMORE organization to run the program with whomever in the firm wants to run the program. So as the pilot program, we had Andrew Fisher, who was previously on the board, connected with a number of people that he knew internally, and just made it happen. And so it was one of our affinity networks through the Christian Fellowship that decided to partner up with BeMORE and run a program. And just in further discussions that we've had with Goldman, they are absolutely thrilled of the results, of the pilot program, and have, confirmed that they are more than willing to, continue this partnership. And so it will be a matter of, being able to identify an additional partnership internally, whether it be through an affinity network or through a division that's interested in running a program. There hasn't been any limitations or any structure in that sense. So, we can, now that we're doing our program remotely, it could be kind of another type of pilot program that we can explore within the firm.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know Goldman Sachs do match funding, and I think some of the donations that the participants did give were match funded by Goldman's, and many corporates have that as well. Okay, Soke has written, how do you think people can best encourage work colleagues and friends to live a life of generosity without feeling like they are forcing it down their throats?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My approach has been, and it has been successful up to now, is more lead by example. And when you live a life of generosity and it is part of who you are, when you're actively involved in organizations and doing work, it becomes a part of who you are. So if you need to leave, half an hour early, it will come up to say why you're leaving half an hour early. And I have found that has been my mechanism to share what I do, is that it's part of my life. And so I'm not necessarily constantly bombarding people with emails and asking them to donate. I feel like my approach has been, to share, that is an important part of my life. I share like all parts of my life. And so by leading by example, I think it becomes something that people become more interested in and ask questions. And I've had a number of people around me, just by sharing, the experience or sharing that I'm doing this webinar tonight, ask questions and want to be involved and join. And so that has been my tactic so far. And I feel like that influence, that ability to just, have people be intrigued and interested is more far reaching than, forcing people or guilting people into wanting to be involved, for sure.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, Nathan says, what did you most like about your BeMORE journey, and what was the most challenging part?
What I enjoyed the most, and I think I mentioned this before, was just the community and coming together with like-minded people and just being able to, in a couple weeks' time, raise the amount of money that we did, be able to connect with the people that we did, just the impact that we were able to have on communities on another continent, to me was just, it was so fulfilling and so impactful to my own life. In terms of challenges, I think is always is the case when you come together as a group, is just being able to solidify and agree the direction that you want to take. But it wasn't anything that was a massive hurdle. It was just more, how do we keep the group happy? How do we get everybody to just be happy with the results and engaged and want to continue to participate? And so I would say that pretty much was like the only challenge, aside from working with a lot of busy people. So kind of getting everybody together at the same time was probably another challenge, but nothing monumental.
Brilliant. This is from Helen, who's saying that she's really excited to have you as the new chair. She asked, what are your thoughts about how easy it is for BeMORE to keep extending its own community at a time when many people are facing greater financial uncertainty?
Sorry, Nick, you broke up a little bit for me. Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. What are your thoughts about how easy it is for BeMORE to keep extending its own community at a time when many people are facing greater financial uncertainty?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the challenge is definitely obvious for us in terms of, there are and there will be more constraints financially for people. What I do know is that this experience with, a number of I'll call it like two main pandemics global pandemics that we've gone through. One being, COVID, and the second being, I think, a number of the events that have, raised the uneasiness in terms of like racial inequality. I think this experience from what discussions and just, a number of discussions that I've had with people, I feel like we have, as a society, become more empathetic than we have in the past. I feel like, in general, it feels like our hearts have been softened and we are a little bit more sensitive to the needs. A number of people have reevaluated what's important in life. We have put, more focus on, the quality time that we're able to now spend with family, friends, etc. So I think there's been a lot of reevaluation, and I think that sense of empathy has grown in our society. So I almost feel like, even though from a financial resource there might be some restrictions, that softening of hearts and that empathy is probably more important within a society than it is to have an abundance of financial resources. Because we could have financial resources, but if you have people that just aren't bothered to give, or just have other priorities, it's of no use. But I think kind of like that moving of the hearts is something that is something that doesn't happen very often. And I feel like this experience has really changed a lot of people. So I feel like people now understand things that maybe they didn't understand before, in terms of what type of need is out there. It's been so evident, right? Like, what a disease can do to people, how important health is. And so my point is that, even though we do have this challenge, I do think that this situation is very unique in that we are now realizing that our well-being and happiness as humans is inherently connected. And that has been evident in this pandemic. And so I'm hopeful and excited that, I feel like we're moving towards a place where people will create a society where we care about each other.
Thank you, Cristina. It's been a real pleasure to hear from you tonight and just answering those questions, putting you on the spot with each of them. If you would like to join BeMORE yourself, listen to our podcast online, join the next webinar. We've got a whole host of speakers coming to speak for us in the autumn term, or you can join our next BeMORE program. We're launching the next one in September, and as soon as they fill up, we'll launch another and another. So you can find out all about how you can join in with this new generosity movement for a time such as this. You can go to bemore.co.uk, and you can email us at hello@bemore.co.uk. Cristina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone, and speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.